Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to a brand new episode of Kaiju Conversation. I'm your host, Elijah, and joining me as always, my co-host and editor, Rex.
Hello there. We meet once again.
See, I was just saying that you have low energy, and here I went in, I started, very mellow, and I was like, let's do it! Welcome everybody back! And I was so energetic, and you're like, hello everybody. It's good.
These things, they happen.
Yes, yes, quite. So we are back for the third episode this month. Man, we're
on a roll.
We're on a roll. We're like kicking serious butt here. Like
Crossing names off the list
left and right. Yeah, it's like I don't know if I'll ever be able to podcast again after this month because I've done so much.
I've got a lot of editing.
You do. And we're gonna have to have a conversation after this month and be like, okay, so we did this amount of content. How are we feeling? And see if we can reassess how to do this. Because now we'll know what it's like to be weekly for a temporary amount of time. So let's go ahead and jump into talking about, we always talk about the most recent Tokusatsu we've watched. Just kind of an update and where we're at. Maybe talk a little news, a little exciting stuff. There is some exciting news. I don't think there's really anything though that
nothing major.
Yeah, I don't remember. I know we covered a bit in Snake Girl, which is all the exciting stuff. Criterion and Shin Ultraman and whatnot. So I can only think of one thing that's new for me. But before we get into that, Rex, did you watch any new Tokusatsu since we last recorded?
Yes, I did actually. I watched Sadako vs. Kayako, the 2016 crossover film, which was
an experience.
Not too bad actually, but just it really doesn't give you the title fight it promises. As it's really just not as good as you'd hope. It's over too quick.
I see.
But pretty fun movie overall. I still can't tell if it was trying to be a comedy or not.
Most horror movies, in the modern era, trying to figure out if they're trying to be a comedy or not.
Yeah, but here's the thing: the film plays pretty much everything straight. But then there are these two kills in the film that are absolutely ridiculous looking, and then there's these two really funny psychic characters as well that just tonally clash with how straight everything else is, but it's really fun otherwise. Just wish the whole Sadako vs. Kayako was better delivered on that promise, but these things happen.
Yeah.
And then after that, I watched Ring Zero, which I'm a bit more. I'm mixed on both, but Ring Zero was less entertaining. It kind of just, I don't know, it was kind of just Carrie, but not as good.
I've yet to see Carrie. I've seen Ring Zero, so I'm gonna have to see what. I don't understand that comparison as well, but I should check out Carrie.
Yeah, it's not too bad. I'd probably like it more on rewatch, given I kind of watched it slightly disjointed, where I watched the first half, then something came up, and then waited half a day to watch the rest. So it does have that kind of going against it, but for what it is, it's okay, I suppose. Just not something I'd actively want to rewatch again, even though I think I inevitably will.
In reference to Ring Zero, right?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Sadako vs. Kayako, I definitely rewatched though.
Fair enough. What else? You've been listening. I can tell you've been watching a lot of J horror. Is it because it's October?
Partly yes, and also I just want to get more into the genre in general. I mean, I've been pretty much every film I've watched this month so far has been horror because I also watched a show movie called Deadstream, the new Hellraiser, and Werewolf by Night. Um,
Okay, so I know we're kaiju and toku. How was Werewolf by Night? I need to
it was
know.
pretty good. It was pretty good.
I want to watch it. Like I'm determined to find a moment where I can sit down and watch that because it looks interesting, and it's got Man Thing, and Man Thing's one of my
Yes,
favorite Marvel characters.
there's even a little. I don't. I think they CG'd over it, but they actually made a practical man thing, which is
I
pretty cool.
saw, I saw, and it's directed by Michael.
Michael Giacchino.
Who did the score for Cloverfield and directed the short comedy movie Monster Challenge. Wasn't that
Something
it?
like that. Something like that. I
Yeah,
don't remember the
with
name.
Patton Oswalt in Japan. He's also said to be. He has proclaimed that he's a huge fan of like Ultraman and Godzilla. So
Hmm.
that's really cool to see him do that. He also did the music for the Jurassic World movies.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I've been interested to see how it turned out.
Yeah,
And
it was pretty good. Probably the best Marvel film or project this year that I've seen.
gotcha.
Bear in mind, I haven't watched any of the TV shows because I, frankly, don't care enough.
I I used to be all updated on the MCU, and like after COVID hit, I've still yet to see Black Widow. I've watched only half of WandaVision. Didn't see Shang-Chi. I
Hmm.
saw the Eternals. I saw the Spider-Man movie. I've yet to see Thor. I haven't watched any other Disney Plus show.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I need
Mm.
to. I'm very far behind. And like I don't know. Maybe it's just I'm not interested in that stuff anymore.
Yeah, for me, I'm just like sort of casually watching these things. Werewolf by Night was the only one that like legitimately had me interested. Granted, Doctor Strange did have at least Sam Raimi, um, and the Bruce Campbell cameo did motivate me to see it as well.
I will say I did like Doctor Strange into the Multiverse of Madness. I
Yeah,
thought
that
that
was all
one
right.
was I I liked how it felt different.
Hmm.
And I appreciated the little ring nod uh,
Hmm.
that Wanda had, and the murders in that. I love the murders in that movie.
Oh yeah,
That's a really
Werewolf by
weird
Night
thing
is
to say.
also gets for an MCU film, it gets decently violent. I'll say that.
Hmm.
Although it's mostly reserved for the last like 10, 15 minutes.
Gotcha, gotcha. But I love John Krasinski's Mr. Fantastic's head popping. It's I don't maybe I'm turning into a psycho, but like I was just like,
I mean,
ooh,
I've
that's
seen Martyrs, so to me, it's like this is tame.
yeah.
You would not be able to handle Martyrs, I can tell you that much.
I don't know. Maybe I could. Maybe I could.
Yeah, sure.
Look, man, I have yet to venture too much into the gore area of
Yeah,
film,
yeah. Here's the thing: Martyrs is like pretty much like the gateway extreme horror.
more so than guinea pigs.
I mean, yeah, more people know about Martyrs and have watched Martyrs than guinea pigs. So yeah.
Okay, but still guinea pigs I've heard is like top
Oh,
tier.
I've heard that's very gory, but I'm still yet to see it.
I've thought about buying it, but I'm also
Mhm.
like, ooh, haha, that's venturing into an area of Japanese cinema I don't know if I really want to go to.
Oh, why
Like,
not?
well, like I don't want to go into the Roman porno films,
Ah,
even though like Shutsuke Kaneko's got like a solid resume of that film,
yeah, solid resume.
and like Tomoko Ai has like a solid resume of like Toei Roman pornos,
Mm-hmm.
and like I could like learn so much more. I'm sure there's some Kumi Mizuno films out there.
Definitely the what's her name? Anne from Ultra Seven. She was in Godzilla vs. Gigan as well.
Okay, yeah.
From what I understand, she has a bit of a career there as well.
So, but like I don't know, like I don't want to go into that. That's like that in like body torture porn. Like I don't know. I don't know if I want to go there yet. I'm liking my genre like sci-fi horror and fantasy right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess maybe one day, I was originally just Godzilla and Kaiju, and then it was like, ooh, let's go into like henshin and like these like superheroes and supernatural stuff, and then I went into J horror, and then I went
Mm-hmm.
into like whatever I'm in now, and like I just keep going.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
It's a rabbit hole, man. It's a rabbit hole. But we got really off topic there.
Mm.
Have you watched any other tokusatsu besides the stuff you've mentioned?
Mm-hmm. Well, there is one notable films, I suppose. There is our episode's title, Matango. Spoiler alert.
Oh, you spoiled it. No, we were supposed to keep it a surprise, Rex.
Tragic. I know. I'm so
We were
sorry.
supposed to
I'm so
keep it
sorry.
a surprise.
I'm
Why?
so sorry. I know the audience would have never pieced
Yes.
never
You know,
pieced together the puzzle.
it's our bit. We keep it a
Mhm.
surprise until we start talking about it.
No, I'm so sorry. This is
God.
absolute tragedy.
So, um, there is one thing I did get going over the last week. I got tickets to go see Godzilla against Mechagodzilla in theaters on Godzilla Day. So I'm going to see another Godzilla movie in theaters. This will make the okay. So this will be the fifth film this year I've seen in theaters,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of surprising. I didn't expect that I would see five Godzilla movies in theaters this year. And
And
considering
meanwhile, I'm here at one.
Yeah. And considering I've also seen Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, Shin Godzilla, 2014 King of the Monsters, and GVK, I've seen 10 of the 37 Godzilla movies. So I've almost seen a third of the franchise in theaters.
I'm at a grand total of 4.
Well, aren't you special? So I'm excited for that. I was hanging out with my best friend at the time. He was taking a shower, and
With you?
no, I was sitting on in the living room, and I realized that I saw the theater by me was showing it, and I ran into the bathroom and I said, "Hey, will you go November 3rd with me to go see a Godzilla movie in theaters?" And he was like, um, when is this?" And I said, "November 3rd. It's Godzilla's birthday. It's like 3 weeks away." He said, sure. I was like, "Thank you. You're awesome. Like, I'm so excited." He was like, "I can tell." So and this will be his first Godzilla movie I've shown him.
Mm-hmm.
Beyond this, I've also shown him Tetsuo the Iron Man, Ju-on, and Ju-on the Snake Girl and the Silver Haired Witch, and Matango.
Mm-hmm.
I actually just realized I've had him watch every podcast movie that we've talked about besides Tetsuo the Iron Man and Godzilla against Mechagodzilla. Interesting.
Damn.
He fell asleep during Ju-on. He fell asleep during Snake Girl. He fell asleep during Matango. So the only film he stayed
Damn.
awake through was Tetsuo the Iron Man, and
I
afterwards
wonder why.
he was like, "What did I just watch? Like, can you explain this to me? I am so confused." So we'll see how he handles Godzilla against Mechagodzilla.
Mm.
We'll see how he handles it. But that's all I got. Um, if you want to, I guess we can head straight into our topic for the episode.
Yes.
Okay. So today, or this week, or this episode, we're talking about the 1963 film Matango, aka Attack of the Mushroom People. Directed by Ishiro Honda, written by Takashi Kimura, right?
Yes.
And starring a great stellar cast.
Mm.
You've got
Akira Kubo,
Akira Kubo, who was in like Destroy All Monsters,
Son of Godzilla.
Godzilla, Gorath,
Mm-hmm.
Yumi Mizuno, who, Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster.
You mean
Mothra
Master Monster?
Yep, yep, yep. Sorry, I was thinking of our other actors in this. Astro Monster, Godzilla Final Wars. You've got Yoshio Tsuchiya, who was
Absolute legend.
Who was in Astro Monster and Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster and a plethora of other films.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've got one of my personal favorite Showa actors. Oh my god. I see his name.
Sahara or Koizumi?
Koizumi. I love him.
Koizumi.
Hiroshi Koizumi, who was in like Godzilla Tokyo SOS, Mothra versus Godzilla, and like a good chunk of the Showa films.
Oh yeah, him, Koizumi, Tsuchiya, and Jun Tazaki are like some of my three favorite Toho regulars to see, alongside like the obvious ones of like Takarada
and Sahara.
Hirata. And Sahara too.
Yeah.
Speaking of which,
Kenji Sahara is also in this film.
Yes.
Who holds? I bet he holds the record for like most like Toho Toku.
I think he might. I don't know. I'd have to check, but he is in a lot. He is one of the most common regulars.
I know he holds the record for most appearances in Godzilla films. But like including the other Toho Tokusatsu works, I think he still is number one.
If not, then he'd be number two.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So this is like it's Toho's fifth human-sized monster film. After, would you count Half Human? Is that? I don't know, because that one's not human. That's actually like a different creature.
Yeah.
Because
I wouldn't count that, but I also haven't seen it, so
gotcha. You've got Moriyoshi Oda's The Invisible Avenger from 1954.
Yeah.
You've got Jun Fukuda's Secret of the Talesian.
And H-Man.
And no, Honda directed H-Man.
Yeah, I know. But H-Man came first.
Okay, yeah. You have, but Honda also did The Human Vapor, did he not?
I believe so.
I'm pretty sure. And then you have Ishiro Honda's The H-Man, The Human Vapor, and lastly, Matango. Matango stands out of all of these because it's the only one where it's not like Invisible Man influenced.
Yeah.
Which Daiei also in the late 40s and 50s was also doing. They did the Rainbow Man. The Invisible Man appears, the Invisible Man versus the Human Fly. They would later do like the Invisible Swordsman, the Invisible Demon, I think is another one they did. So, Invisible Man movies were kind of popular. Toho would later go on and do like their Bloodthirsty trilogy. They did Frankenstein. But Matango was the one that was, to me, stands out the most because it's the most original out of their human-sized monsters.
I mean, it also has that closer sort of link, for a lack of a better word, to to the more typical Honda films that people think of, where it's got a lot of that nuclear radiation message mixed in alongside a few other themes throughout the film.
I'm pretty sure the H-Man is still very heavily... I mean, Honda includes...
It probably is. I haven't seen H-Man, but Matango is a bit more visually direct.
I disagree. I mean, are we talking
it nearly
about
got panned, so...
Oh, true. But like the H-Man, I'm pretty sure if I remember right, it's all through radiation.
I'd have to watch H-Man myself, really.
It's been a long time since I've seen the H-Man, but I'm pretty sure.
I've been like putting off watching it for like weeks now. I keep meaning to, and I keep being like, I'm gonna watch this tonight. I'm gonna watch this tonight, and then I forget.
Yeah, so I just quickly checked, and I was correct. The H-Man is about the radiation from the hydrogen bomb, hence why his name's the H-Man. H is hydrogen. Turns him invisible, or turns him into this mist, and if people touch him, he dies, or they die.
I see.
So I would argue that one's a little more like hitting it than Matango, but I think what's interesting is Matango also, like you mentioned, carries other themes and thoughts, and leaving the radiate, like the H-bomb and radiation metaphors, is kind of a
sort of background element.
Yes, exactly. So, I mean, I've watched this film before. Was this your first time watching it, Rex?
Second?
Okay. This was my second, and I watched it a third time too, for this podcast, for this recording. So I'm still relatively new to it, as well.
Mm-hmm.
But watching this film, I couldn't help but notice how well it looked. It was very detailed.
Very atmospheric too, particularly with all that fog and the pretty at times intense lighting as well.
The staging of this film is very different from most of Honda's films. You know, there's a lot of moments where Honda doesn't do the extreme angles, but like when they're exploring the shipwreck ship, I couldn't help but notice the intense angles he was using. It was like, ooh.
And then when the whole screen goes red when they go into the captain's room as well.
Yeah, I really appreciate it because H-Man's pretty tame from what I remember. This is a rare occurrence of where Honda doesn't feel like Honda. He feels like traditional kaiju Honda, I should say. It feels more like something I would watch in like Qui-Gon. Now, it's not as artistically like vibrant and whatnot, but it feels like a horror movie.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And it definitely feels like tonally, it feels noticeably far removed from all but 54 in how dark it is in comparison to, say, like Dogora, Ghidorah, Astra Monster. I mean, I suppose Terror of Mechagodzilla was darker than, say, a lot of the other Showa era Godzilla films, but even then, I'd argue Matango's a lot darker than Terra would ever dare to go, you know?
Right. No, you're right. And part of that is through the writing that Kimura, I think, produced for this film, because
it was Kimura.
His script is very, very, like, dark and cruel.
I mean, from what I read, I want to say this was a quote from this was from a quote from Honda, but I could be wrong. Typically, when Honda would want to go for a more lighthearted story, he would approach Sekizawa. But if he was going for something that was either more negative or politically driven, then he would go to Kimura,
Right. No,
to write the films.
that's how it was. That's how it worked with Honda in these Toku movies. And Honda even has went on to say that the script for Matango was Kimura's one of his finest works.
I believe Kimura himself even said that.
I read that Kimura wasn't too happy.
Really?
I'm pretty sure it was in the Peter Hayes Brothers book, where Honda like praised it, and Kimura was like, "Eh."
Because I read a few sources. I want to say it was Steve Rifle's book that had this. I could be wrong. Where it was like Kimura said that it was his favorite, and that from Frankenstein vs. Baragon onwards, that was sort of when he became like writer for hire for these films.
Right, because
I want to say that was Rifle's book. I could be wrong.
Because I know a little bit after Matango, he did start writing under a pseudonym because he didn't want to be attached to these. He didn't like his name being on them. So Matango, he was at least proud of. We know that because like his name's attached to it. But I don't want to get into the characters too much, but like even how the characters are, it's just very. It's not a very deep film, but it's very well developed. And you can see Kimura's hatred for the way Japan was turning. And Honda was also criticizing it based off of a recent event. Obviously the film, well, not obviously, maybe people don't know, it was based off of a book or a story by William Hope named A Voice in the Night, which then was later adapted into Matango by Masami Fukushima. And then Takashi Kimura, adapted that and wrote the screenplay. But prior to Matango coming out and being made, there was an event where a bunch of wealthy teenagers stole one of their parents' yachts and got lost in sea, and they had to
be rescued.
They had to be rescued. So,
I mean, not only that, there was also Japan was more or less recovering both like politically, socially, and economically from World War II. It was going into a sort of golden age because this was like right before the Olympics, wasn't it?
Yes, it was 1 year before the Olympics, so they were really hyping that up.
Yeah. So a lot of just people were sort of becoming wealthier. The younger generation was sort of becoming more fascinated with like foreign culture as well, and foreign luxuries, which is sort of what Honda and Kimura, I should say, part of what they wanted to tackle within the script.
Right.
There is another element of drug abuse that is very prevalent and probably the most
blatant.
I would say the most explicit theme in the film.
Yeah. And one thing I wanted to point out, so the film we just talked about, The Snake Girl and the Silver-Haired Witch, came out 5 years after Matango. Matango and like Kwaidan, one of my personal favorite J-horror films from 1965, Toho also produced and distributed that. Those are very Japanese. And those were developed before and around the time that, the Olympics happened. But those were done by seasoned directors. People like Noriaki Uwasa, or the director of the Bloodthirsty trilogy, their films are more inspired by that gothic horror. Snake Girl and the Silver-Haired Witch felt like a Hammer movie. The Bloodthirsty trilogy is literally Christopher Lee Dracula, but Japanese. Um, so within 10 years of Matango, we were seeing this change of traditional Japanese horror into more traditional English horror.
Yeah. Sort of like a homogenization of sorts.
Right. Kind in a way, much like how Gojira or Godzilla was, taking influence from like the Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, except this was in a more direct way, as Godzilla was still Japanese through and through, uh, but like the Bloodthirsty trilogy and Snake Girl and the Silver-Haired Witch clearly feel more Western at points than Eastern.
Yeah.
And of course, that would change later. We would get like House from 1977, the Guinea Pig franchise, and horror would go through this development up until we would have Ring and Ju-on, which would reinvent the uh, the genre again, uh, much like how at one point J horror especially was based on Japanese folklore, snake girls, and then that fear of the atom. We had H Man, Secret of Talesian, Matango. Uh, you know, it's interesting to see the development here, and I think Matango is a great example of a very successful Japan, but before they allowed the outside cultures to influence their cinema, which is what I think is one of the most interesting aspects of the film. It feels like a pre developed J horror film before the genre really became its own genre. I'm sorry, I kind of went on a ramble there. So maybe we want to backtrack here. I mentioned how I loved the details and like the sets. You mentioned the angles and like the lighting. The production design of this film I thought was really. I mean, Honda before the film like pulled the cast and crew aside and said, "This is a serious film. This is like I want it to be as good as possible."
Yeah.
Um,
I mean,
and
Honda
it
had
shows.
just come back from like sort of a small break of sorts from directing and was apparently very passionate about Matango.
Yeah, I mean, from what I read in the Ishiro Honda book from Steve Reifel and Ed Godzizeski, uh, around this time, Honda, he was riding high off of having one of the most successful films in Japan, being King Kong vs.
Yeah.
Godzilla. But he didn't want to just make Godzilla movies, and he was wanting to do more. And he had plenty of money. I read that I guess he accidentally would like overpay his cab driver and not realize it, and like he just kind of he was on cloud nine, like he was living his best life, and he wanted to make Matango, and Tanaka approved it. Tanaka knew it might be a risk, but he was like, "You've been producing so much good content, you can have this."
Yeah.
And then, of course, after this, we wouldn't see Honda return to that. Even though I've read and seen that it's been generally well liked. From what I've been able to gather, initially the film did not receive the best of reviews.
Yeah. From what I understand, it did not appeal at all to mainstream Japanese, mainstream Japanese people, and particularly critics who did not enjoy the film and kind of got doomed more or less to obscurity in Japan for a while. from what I understand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which is a shame because, he did Gorath after this. And part of me wonders if because of Matango's, because Matango came out before Gorath, am I right? It was Honda's film right before.
Wasn't Gorath 1962?
Was Gorath
Let's check.
62?
Yeah, it was. It was
It was?
March
Okay.
62.
Okay. So, like in Gorath, he was forced by Tanaka to include Maguma. Then he had King Kong versus Godzilla, and then he did Atragon. But I'm pretty sure Atragon was after Matango. I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
Atragon was the Toho's Christmas movie.
Mm-hmm.
So Matango is kind of
I mean, yeah,
sandwiched
that was
between
kind of celebrating the year 64, which was year of the dragon.
Dragon. In China, it was the Year of the Dragon, yes. So here you've got King Kong versus Godzilla. Then you have Gorath. And then Tanaka lets him go with Matango. And then he does Atragon, and then he does Mothra versus Godzilla.
Yeah.
So Matango is like this little dip, because it does utilize kaiju techniques. In fact, Nakajima even played one of the Matango, the mushroom men, in the film. And it's sad to see that Honda couldn't produce more stuff like this. I think Matango.
I would kill for more like straight up horror films from Ishiro Honda.
Yeah, and like have Kimura write them because it's a stark contrast to his traditional film.
Oh, it absolutely is, particularly coming off the King Kong vs. Godzilla.
Right. Yeah, no, it's a complete 180. One thing I wanted to quickly, I just checked this because I was genuinely curious. I remember in the audio commentary track for Destroy All Monsters, they talked about how the cinematographer for that film, who had worked with Honda, liked to do really tight shots.
Yeah.
So I just went and I checked what films, who did the cinematography for Matango, and it was
Hajime Koizumi.
Correct. Who also did like the Mysterians, the H-Man, Varen, Monkey Sun, Battle in Outer Space, The Human Vapor, Mothra, Gorath, King Kong vs. Godzilla, Matango, Atragon, Mothra vs. Godzilla, Dogora, Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, Frankenstein vs. Baragon, Invasion of Astro Monster, The War of the Gargantuas, King Kong Escapes, Ultra Q, but they were director of special effects on that, and they also did episodes of Ultraman Ace. And one thing I'm noticing here is a lot of these films, there's not a lot of the Godzilla films here. It's a lot of Honda's non-Godzilla, minus, King Kong versus Mothra, Ghidorah, and Astro Monster.
Yeah.
He definitely worked with Honda a lot, obviously.
Oh, definitely. I mean, didn't Honda work on? Was it Ace?
No, he worked on Return of
Ultraman.
Correct.
Yeah. So,
which I'm pretty sure I want to say the cinematographer for that film or for that episode might have been the same that also did like Destroy All Monsters, because I remember those episodes and I'm like, yeah, that's definitely a Shiro Honda. Like it looks like a Honda film. But a lot of these are, pretty, or not pretty, but some of a good majority of these are somewhat dark. The Mysterians, the H-Man, Varen, Battle in Outer Space, Human Vapor, Gorath, Matango, Atragon, Dogora, Frankenstein.
Atragon.
Yeah, Atragon. Which I actually wanted to bring up. I think it's interesting Honda did Atragon after Matango, because Atragon also is a very bleak film. From what I remember, I haven't watched it in a little bit, but Jinguchi, correct? The captain of the Gotengo.
Yeah.
He is like what he kind of reminds me of Kimura. Like he hates, but more nationalistic, of course.
Hmm. I mean, from what I understand, Kimura was a member of the Japanese Communist
Correct.
Party.
Correct. He was. So it's interesting to like see Honda in 1963 without a Godzilla film being very like dark,
Mm.
not very exciting.
Mm.
Right off the
I mean,
heels of King Kong versus too.
I mean, I don't know. Gorath got pretty. I would argue Gorath is a bit more bleak than is. Yeah, I'd say Gorath is more bleak than Atragon. I mean, the whole first 10 minutes with Jun Tazaki, Jinguji from Atragon, um, he he probably delivers his best performance in any of like the films he worked with Honda on
Mm-hmm.
in Gorath's first 10 minutes. And I'd say Gorath itself is a bit more just bleak and hopeless. I'd say it's hopeful, but there's definitely a lot more bleak imagery,
Mm-hmm.
particularly when all the destruction happens near the end of the film with the tsunamis and all that, which
Gotcha.
is also some of the best looking destruction in some of Eiji Tsuburaya's best destruction, I'd say as well.
I see. I haven't seen Gorath yet,
You
so that
should watch it.
I would like to. I would really like to. But that's fair. That's fair. Another thing I wonder for why Gorath, not Gorath, Matango is the way it is because of its rushed production.
Hmm.
Because while they were filming it, they were also editing it.
Hmm.
And I found out that production ended on July 28th, and the film came out in August. So there was, I'm pretty
Wow.
sure there was about a month.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it finished shooting July 28th, and the film came out August 11th.
Megalon moment?
August 11th, so it had about 2 weeks to finish the film from shooting. And they shot it almost in order of how the film proceeds because
Mhm.
they wanted the actors to be able to Honda it's essentially a character study. It's like Honda wanted the actors to get their characters and flow with them, so they shot the film in chronological order for the most part just to have that. um, they shot for I think it was about 3 months.
Mhm.
um, about 3 months they shot, and while they were shooting, and that's including the special effects sequences, which from what I've gathered the actors also got to watch, they would be editing the film as well and finalizing it.
Mm.
So
That is a very tight post production.
yeah, I'm shocked that it's Honda wanted something really tight, and I think part of it was the rushed aspect. Like everybody's like trying their hardest to do something remarkable,
Mm.
and they were working with new technology, the frontal projection system and
Yeah.
the Oxbury. This was the first film that Honda, that was Toku related, that Honda used them on,
Mhm.
and Superaya.
Yeah. I mean, from what I understand, it was the first film they in general used it on, I believe.
I know it's at least one of the first. I didn't know if there was another Toho film that had utilized them prior. So I
Mm.
didn't want to be
I
like
mean, either way, it was brand new technology for
right,
them,
right.
given it was like was it one of two?
Two. Disney had the other in the
Yeah,
United
Disney,
States.
yeah.
Yeah. And Toho had the other.
Mhm.
So they're experimenting. They're trying to create this really tight knitted film, and they're shooting this while editing. It's like, how did you make this happen? Like, what black
How is
magic?
this not another Megalon?
Well, I'll tell you why. It's because you had Honda directing and not Fukuda.
True.
Not digging Fukuda.
Yeah, no, we don't slander
Fukuda.
we don't slander Fukuda in this neighborhood.
No. But Honda's more qualified than Fukuda.
Hmm.
It's just facts.
Fukuda is still absolutely a based man.
He is. He is. He made some of the coolest kaiju films in cinema history.
Hmm.
So, it's really surprising how well it was made, and a lot of that comes from like Tsuburaya and Nakano, because Teruyoshi Nakano worked on this
Yeah.
as well. He actually was the one that invented the effect of the mushrooms rising, which was using a prototype formula for styrofoam. So they're even using like unknown chemicals to like make it work. Like this whole film is an experiment, and I think it's really interesting because the Matango might be an experiment as well in the film. We don't know. So it's really like, it's just so interesting.
Mm.
And, this was Mizuno before her big break in Astro Monster.
Mm-hmm.
This
I mean,
was.
supposedly, even though the film is generally was became an obscure relic of everyone's filmography, Mizuno claims that, though there is some discrepancy on whether this is true, Mizuno does claim that this film is responsible for an American studio trying to get it to star in a film with John Palestine, I want to say it was.
Okay.
That there is some dispute as to whether that's actually true, and if Mizuno was confusing it with another film. But either way, the film was cancelled. So
Right. Yeah, and like even Kira Kubo mentioned that like there would be military personnel that's like, oh, you're from Matango. I mean, it's obvious the film did do really well overseas. One thing I noticed at the end, while our two main characters, our love interests, are hiding in the shipwreck. Have you ever seen John Carpenter's The Fog?
I have not, sadly.
Okay.
Still a high
So
priority.
that film is about this fog that rolls into this town.
Yeah.
And this ship appears out in the ocean. And then they find out there's a curse, and now the dead shipmates of that boat are haunting the town, and they're going around and they're killing people. And the imagery in the film, in Matango, specifically when the mushroom people are breaking down the windows and the doors, is very similar to how the fog shipmates break down the windows of the church and the old lady's house in the film. And I couldn't help but think, I was like, fog, shipwreck, really weird looking people who are from the sea breaking down doors. I was like, this had to inspire people. Like John Carpenter had to have been inspired by this film in some manner.
I mean, that wouldn't be surprising at all, given Carpenter's pretty well-known respect for Ishiro Honda's filmmaking.
Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah. I would love to hear. Like, I really just want to hear John Carpenter talk about Matango, because I feel like there could be some interesting stuff he could say about how that film influenced him. I mean, there was even a possible American remake of this film by the director of Magic Mike, of all people. But apparently the Toho couldn't agree with the U.S. Producer studio to make the film happen, and Toho was going to remake the film in the 90s, making it so the Matango were from outer space, but the film just never materialized. Though there is a fan-made sequel and a sequel novel that you can buy on Amazon, because I looked for it. It's available.
Good to know.
It sounds from what everybody has said, looking past just the international appeal, the cast and crew of this film did love what they were working on. Akira Kubo highly talks about the film. Everybody that is a part of this production really mentions how well they liked Matango, especially when you realize that this was a very tightly knit crew. Like they were working with each other on a very rushed schedule, but they were working really well. I read in the Honda book that there's really never any accidents, and Honda was a really flexible director to what help create what would be proper for the film to like flow. Honda was willing to like work with his actors to like create the characters so they would flow even better, and it really surprises me like how well received this film was within its own crew. So a lot of people mentioned that they weren't sold on the designs. They thought they looked silly, but they still went with it. And I will agree the Matango don't look that horrifying. Besides the actual man, not the mushroom people.
I think the half transformed ones are probably more effective, but I don't care really. I still love like the full mushroom men.
Yeah, I agree. It's iconic.
But no, I think for the time it's a pretty effective film, and I think Honda's commentary, particularly on not only the spoiled rich brats that most of the characters essentially are, but also just how crippling drug addiction is. I find all that really interesting as well.
Mhm. Yes, and I'm happy you brought that because I failed to mention throughout this how I loved the fact that none of these characters are really protagonists until like the last.
Until Akira Kubo becomes the protagonist at the very
Right.
end.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And even then at the end he's like, I should have just stayed there. And
Yeah.
he brings up there was two versions of the ending shot. There was one where he was a regular human being, and there was one where he turned
Yeah.
into. And I agree with Akira Kubo. They should have kept the original where he was just a human.
Mm.
I think that makes his character a little less dislikable because it's like you went through this whole thing and you still ate the mushrooms. Like you're a horrible human being. Like
I don't know. The thing with that is you got the obvious interpretation that Akira Kubo's character gave in to the pressure and decided to eat some mushrooms at the very end of the movie. But then I also kind of interpreted it more as like sort of like secondhand smoking, where you aren't, secondhand smoking. You are not the one smoking. You're just around everyone who is, and you're just around it, and the smoke from a cigarette invades your body and does have some effects of it on it. So that's sort of how I took this ending, particularly given he's not fully transformed. He's not even as far transformed as some of the other characters get. Only a bit of his face has been transformed so far.
sure, but doesn't that also? And I guess there's always this potential possibility. It seems like the mushroom invades the brain too,
Mm-hmm.
and like makes you
Yeah.
act and say different
Oh
things.
yeah,
So
yeah,
maybe.
no, definitely. It's pretty. It's very similar to say hallucinogens.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm. So maybe okay, hear me out. Maybe he is crazy and it's not like it's a whole Joker aspect. Like it's actually all in his head.
I mean, it could be the way the story is told. It is his recollection of the events. So,
Right.
given it's all his flashbacks.
I just thought Ooh, that's would be an interesting twist. Like it's all in his head. Like none of it actually happened. Like some real Godzilla's revenge stuff here.
I think that would even work better with that alternate ending you've brought up, where he didn't have any of the makeup on, and he just looked normal like everyone else.
But also, did that? Speaking real quick, I just thought about this. Does
Mm.
this mean that while he was telling a story, looking out at Tokyo, the mushrooms grew on him?
Maybe I noticed that he didn't seem to have the mushrooms in the first
Uh-uh.
scene.
He didn't.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of weird stuff with the ending. It leaves it up to an interpretation. I guess now there's three. It's like you're screwed no matter what. He succumbed to the harsh reality of none of our characters are actually good people,
Mhm.
or it's all in his head and he's actually crazy. And maybe it's because he did take drugs,
Mhm.
you know.
True.
So
True.
that's there's some interesting stuff to be said there,
Mm.
um, and to be interpreted.
Mm.
Which, for the most part, a lot of Honda's films try to not do that. They try to have a clear, like, 54 is obvious. If another bomb happens, another Godzilla will come.
Yeah.
Bombs are, um, in Mothra versus Godzilla, it's uh,
Greed and capitalism.
greed and capitalism. Like, that's.
And then they get their comeuppance at the very end, or not even at the very end.
Mm-hmm. So, like, the fact that Matango has all of these different ideas, and it's not even like a poor script. It's not like King of the Monsters 2019, where they're trying to support nature has an order, but then they have to say, well, man can interfere and help save the planet by using nukes, but
Mhm.
then also have the anti nuclear metaphor. Like, there's a lot of like that film has so many back and forth narratives and like messages and metaphors that it's convoluted.
Yeah.
Whereas here in Matango there's a ton of ideas and they all make sense. They're not fighting with each other.
I mean, it's a much more focused script than King of the Monsters, which is even taken for what merits it does have, is pretty all over the place.
Right. This is true. This is true. Um but before cuz I mean now we've really talked about the characters and we've talked about the J horror part.
Mhm.
Um I wanted to bring up the sets again. I love
Yeah.
the sets in this film. I know there were some complaints that they didn't match perfectly with the on location shooting.
Yeah, but I don't know.
I still
It
like
didn't
it.
bother.
I
It
thought it
didn't
looked
bother
good.
me. Like,
Yeah.
frankly, there are far more egregious examples of that in movies.
Right.
So, really, I didn't pick up on it. I can kind of see it thinking back, but like, it really doesn't bother me.
It,
Yeah.
it never really bothered me in the film either. Like I thought the sets looked so good. I love the detail. I love the paint and the color in those sets is really good. It looks disgusting.
Oh yeah,
Like
the ship especially.
yeah. Um, and then like the Matango man is unsettling. It's not nice to look at. Um,
The first scene with the Matango man as well, when he's on the ship, is really really good, really suspenseful.
mhm, I agree. And part of that, I also and this segues into kind of my last thing I wanted to bring up, which was the sound design.
Mm,
I the film's kind of empty, but it uses that emptiness to like create more. Does that make
yeah,
sense?
it's not in your face about things.
Right. It's not like your traditional Ifukube bombastic in
Yeah.
your face or your Sato
Mm.
uh, in your face score. It's a lot
Oh
more
yeah,
like
the score is a lot. for a lack of a better term, smaller, whereas
Mm-hmm.
Ifukube scores are typically grandiose.
Mm-hmm.
Although I will say Ifukube does have some good tense music and Mysterians, to be fair.
This is true. This is true. Um, but like the Matango laugh, which
Yes.
I'm more
Familiar with it as the Boltons.
as the Boltons laugh.
Yeah, same.
It's so it's such a great sound effect.
It is.
It's unnerving.
And it's over, and in the sequence near the end, it is overwhelming, really.
Hmm. And you could genuinely feel like you're going crazy
Oh,
as
yeah.
yeah. And that's during that whole final sequence, I'm like, yeah, I'd be like tripping out too. Like this is
Oh, and
wild.
just picturing being in that actual situation, that would be absolutely terrifying. Being that overwhelmed by these deformed monsters who are massive in comparison to you as well. You know, like even the half transformed ones are played by some decently tall actors, at least compared to like Akira Kubo.
Right. And like it's a very claustrophobic set too. Like there's
Yes.
not a lot you can do in that set. And it just adds to it.
Mm. I mean, when he's on the ship, getting attacked by the half transformed ones, he's he's got one door and like two small windows.
Windows. Hmm.
Yeah, that's it. It is very damn claustrophobic. And then
Hmm.
at the end, when he's surrounded by them all, he's in the middle of basically their nest of sorts.
Right. And one thing I will say, you brought up the ship, and I just thought about this. And we've been talking about claustrophobic. There's another film that does this. That if I let me describe to you this film:
Mm-hmm.
a crew on a ship on
Oh,
a craft
I think I know where this is going.
winds up on a mysterious winds up in a mysterious location where
Yeah.
a mysterious other craft
Yep.
is wrecked, and they go in to investigate, and they discover some weird parasitic thing,
Hmm.
and
Would this happen
eventually
to be a Ridley Scott film?
it might be.
Oh.
But what I just kind of realized is it kind of follows that similar trope there in those regards, um to your like Alien,
Yeah.
and in some cases I'd say both are very similar. um I
No
mean
wonder why I love Matango.
the general premise, I think it's there. It's not the exact same by any means,
Hmm.
but the comparison could be made, I
Hmm.
think. But overall, I must say though, as we've been analyzing, I'm not a huge fan of Matango.
Damn, really?
Um, I've been keeping my opinion uh quiet because I wanted to actually analyze, and now we're kind of, at least to me, I'm getting into more of my analytical, or not my analytical, my critical view. I find the film a little boring. Um, there's a lot of it's very fast. Not a lot happens. Um, and like I'm fine with not a lot happening, but I I very much prefer House or
Hmm.
Qui-Gon. Um, even one of the Bloodthirsty films, I think I would prefer over Matango. Um, I don't think it's a horrible film by any means. I mean, I just sat here for the last like hour talking about the film analytically. But that being said, I just don't find it as entertaining as other films. I even found the Snake Girl and the Silver Haired Witch more unsettling than Matango. Matango has its moments whenever I think it's Yoshio Tsuchiya
Suchiya.
when he finally eats the mushroom, and we have that whole like uh, sequence where he's like dreaming.
Hmm.
That I was started to I when I watched that for the second time, I was like, okay, now we're getting a little like experimental and psychedelic, but it kind of, I mean, aspect continued on with like the when Akira Kubo goes to rescue his girlfriend, and it doesn't work out. But I don't know, it just, when I compare to J horror films of the time, I think I much prefer like Qui-Gon. I love that film. I don't know why. It's very long and very quiet and very boring, but I think it is a lot more interesting than your typical uh than like Matango.
I need to find a good night to watch Qui-Gon. I really
I
need to.
I I love it.
I've
I
heard its praise sung a lot, not just by you, but a lot. So,
and it even features an appearance by Godzilla actor uh oh my god. I know it, like I talk about him, the greatest actor in the world. Uh uh Takashi Shimura. He has a part in the film. But I that is a grand example of, I think, slow burn horror for Japanese horror especially. Um I don't think Matango's bad, but I don't think it's I would I probably will watch most of Honda's other films before I'll rewatch Matango again.
mm. You see, for me, on my first watch, I absolutely adored Matango. Um, Mind you, it was not my first non-Godzilla movie from Honda. It was probably like my fourth or fifth, I think, because I'd seen Rodan and Mothra and one or two others beforehand. Um, but this, but as as a film, I really enjoyed it. I didn't enjoy it as much this time. I think this film is a bit more geared to it's a bit more enjoyable on the first watch when you don't know what's going to happen,
Mm-hmm.
rather than to just. It's definitely not one to just rewatch over and over and over again, I'd say. Um,
Sure.
but I still really like it, and it's probably at the moment my favorite J horror film. Granted, I do need to rewatch House.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, you'd consider Tetsuo J horror, wouldn't you?
So, yeah, I guess
I don't know. If that could be considered horror, then mm,
it's body horror. I know that for a fact.
yeah, that's true. Actually, yeah.
So
And
go ahead.
I was gonna say that's probably the only thing that I'd say from the Japanese horror that I've seen that I would say I like more than Matango.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but again, I do need a rewatch House.
Yeah. Now, I was going to hold off until next week's episode to ask this question, but I might as well ask you now, and then we can fill in with the next film when I bring this up again. So, for this spooky season, we've talked about now 3 films.
Mhm.
How would you rank the 3 films we've watched? So we've watched Ju-on the Grudge, The Snake Girl and the Silver-Haired Witch, and Matango. What's the best? What's the second best? What's the third best?
Well, I've already spoiled what the first would be. So obviously Matango. I really love Ishiro Honda's filmmaking. So that's an easy number 1 spot for me. But the second is actually a pretty hard choice because I really do like both Ju-on and Snake Girl.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm probably going to say Snake Girl. I like more purely because I think, even though I think Ju-on at times is absolutely brilliant, and Kayako and Toshio, can't forget him, are iconic characters for very good reason. I do think the film is a bit too uneven at the end. It goes on for too long, and the last act that last section just is a bit too contrived. Whereas Snake Girl and the Silver-Haired Witch kept me pretty consistently entertained throughout the whole movie. And I thought the writing was pretty consistent throughout as well.
I couldn't disagree with you more. Wow. Okay, so here's why you're wrong. For me, number 1.
Okay, well, I'm right.
For number 1, Ju-on the Grudge. Ju-on the Grudge is horrifying. And like, it is the only film that I have sat and legitimately gotten freaked out over. Like, my friend, the other night, we were going to go for a little drive, and it's like 2 a.m. We're going from his apartment, which I realized looks a lot like the Ju-on house. Like, when you he lives in this 2-story house that's used for apartments. When you walk in, there's a staircase that's very tight that goes up, and then there's a hallway
that goes up. That's crazy.
And there's a narrow hallway that goes straight to like a living room. And when you go up, you can go to the right, and there's a room there, and there's a hallway that goes back. It's like really, I'll have to send you a video, but it's really like structurally similar.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I just realized your house is like the one from Ju-on. And he's like, yeah, the girl's going to start coming out. I'm like, yeah, making a horrifying noise. And then we got outside, and he started making the and like, I just get chills every time. Every time. Like, it freaks me out. Stop. I can't do it. I can't do it. There's something about Kayako that scares me. I will mute you. And like, it's horrifying. So like, that's my number 1 easily.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough.
Next, I will say it is difficult. It is difficult because Matango is very thought-provoking and very deep in metaphors and messages and interpretations. Whereas Snake Girl is like a nice gothic horror film with a Japanese twist.
Yeah.
That being said, however, I have seen the Bloodthirsty trilogy, and I have seen better gothic horror with Japanese twists in like The Evil of Dracula. So I think for my number 2, I would put Matango because I do genuinely like the script, and I think it's a decent film. It's not my favorite film, but I think it's decent. And then I would put Snake Girl and the Silver-Haired Witch as last, just because I have seen better gothic J-horror. But I don't think any of these are bad. I was genuinely surprised by the Snake Girl and the Silver-Haired Witch.
Oh, same.
Matango is a solid Honda film, and it's got everything you need to prove that it's a Honda film. And then you've got Ju-on, which to me is a horrifying movie. Like, even upon rewatch, I am horrified by that film. And that is like the perfect example of a horror movie to me because I do not get scared by horror.
Mm-hmm.
Did I say that it was the perfect horror movie? I did. In the recording, I said it kind of falls into the perfect horror movie. So that's my current ranking. Now,
Ironic considering that was probably the one we complained most about in the recording.
yeah. This is true. This is true. Now next week, it's the last week of spooky season.
Ooh.
Oh
no, spooky season's almost over.
I know, right? Even though we are recording these like so far in advance, I just started. But yeah, October has came and gone, and
definitely.
And maybe I've gone and done some spooky stuff. I hope I have. I did have a Halloween party I was supposed to go to.
Ooh.
Yeah. We'll see how that goes. But we deliberately set up this schedule to kind of sandwich some stuff.
Yeah.
And I honestly, with how Snake Girl ended up being, I think we made a amazing slate. Like this October was solid. Like this was a solid month.
I was skeptical on Snake Girl at first, but goddamn, that ended up being a really good choice.
Mm-hmm. I'm very happy that I recommended it and we went with it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I had no idea what I was getting into, and I'm not upset with. That's why I said first best, second best, and third best because I don't think there's a bad film we've talked about.
Yeah, no, I think all of these are actually quite good films. They're all going for something very different too.
And for people listening, if you haven't got into Japanese horror tokusatsu,
it's superior.
It is superior, and honestly, like, check out the films that we're covering. These are all like Matango is a great entryway for Showa. Snake Girl is a great entryway for gothic horror. Ju-on is a great entryway for modern.
Ju-on is just a straight up classic, like a modern classic.
And the next film that we're going to be covering, it's like I don't want to give it away. I really don't want to give it away.
One of the most iconic of the genre.
It's iconic, but like check these out. If you've been listening to us talk about them, check them out. I'm a little disappointed because we've spoiled like all of these films. We've talked like them to death.
I mean, we didn't go too crazy into the plot of Snake Girl, so
this is true. But like, check them out. They're solid, and you know, there's still a plethora of horror that we haven't even touched yet. And we've already
House,
like Versus, Evil Dead Trap. All of these are like great other horror films that we haven't covered yet.
And they're very unique to what you will typically see out of this genre if you're more experienced with Western style horror as well.
Right. Exactly. And we're already planning next year's spoopy season. It's a little different, but I think it'll be a treat. It's going to be a treat. But I've enjoyed this, and honestly, this kind of makes me wish we could do weekly podcasts because like it's been kind of fun. to every week sit down and talk about this stuff.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Rex is secretly like, oh, definitely not.
I enjoy the recording part.
Yeah, the recording part's fun. It's just the whole editing process that's like, nah, I'm good.
We'll talk about every 2 weeks before we talk about every week,
Yeah. But I think this is a good place to go ahead and wrap up for this episode. In the next episode, we can conclude
quadrilogy.
Our quadrilogy of horror films for the year. And then we've got next month, and then we're just going to keep cranking them out, baby.
Yes.
So, I'm excited for where the podcast is going. I'm genuinely happy with where we're going. As long as like life doesn't throw us a curveball, I think, and I don't want to speak for Rex, so if Rex wants to step in here and correct me for a second, he can. But I genuinely think we are starting to get our proper footing with the podcast.
Oh, definitely.
So just stay tuned, guys. Just hang in with us.
Someday, soon enough, we'll get back to the every 2 week schedule.
Yeah. And maybe we'll end up doing weekly one day again.
That's possible. It's very possible.
It is. I mean, this
Life
month
is full of mysteries.
This month is a proof that like we can do it. It's just
we've had no troubles at all whatsoever.
None.
None for this recording in particular.
Yeah, nobody knows that there was an hour gap between part of the recording. You know what? And if that's left in and you're like, there was an hour gap, I dare you to tell me where. I dare you to send us a message and be like, it was right here. This is when you guys stopped recording and started recording.
You're right.
So there you go. There's your challenge. Find out where we stopped our recording.
If you want a hint, guys, listen to how tired he sounds.
Oh, wow. Wow. It'll go like, I'm so happy. And it's like, yeah, I'm here now. What's up, dudes? Hey, I'm Rex, like at the beginning of the recording.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, enough of us bantering, because obviously people don't want to hear us banter, even though that's kind of what we do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're annoying a-holes.
Speak for yourself. I'm just an objectively right person.
If that's what you want to say.
I am.
Sure. We'll let the viewer decide that.
Real Japanese horror fans appreciate Ju-on and don't put them last on their top 3.
It's good. It's good.
It's great.
It's good.
It's horrifying.
I don't find it that scary.
I can't sleep, Kayako.
Well, that's your problem, frankly. I won this argument.
No, you didn't. No, you didn't.
Ooh, getting defensive.
No, I'm not getting defensive. You're getting defensive. But before we carry on too long, I think it is now time for us to do our little links. Yes. So, Rex, why don't you tell the lovely individual listening to us where they can find you at and what you do?
Well, my dear viewers, you can find me on YouTube, Rex Xeno, on Twitter at Rex_Xenomorph, and last but certainly not least, on Instagram at Rex_Xeno. Oh, and how could I forget? I also write for a little news site called the Tokusatsu Network. So check that out if you want. If you want to stay up to date with the world of Tokusatsu.
Definitely check those out. And you can find me on Twitter at ET13 Productions, on YouTube at ET13 Productions, and on Instagram at ET13 Productions. If you want to find my personal stuff, go for it. I dare you. You can probably find it. It's apparently not that hard. I should know because some people have found it, and they're an interesting group and an interesting person.
Interesting. I'm going to have to
Mm-hmm.
ask you about this later.
You will. You're going to laugh your butt off. I swear, you're going to just laugh and laugh and laugh.
Mhm.
But as for the podcast, oh, how could I forget? I also write Kaiju Ramen Media, a quarterly magazine and website where the kaiju community has gathered to create the ultimate magazine. I have written an article on King Kong versus Godzilla, Takashi Miike's Zebra Man, the Daimajin trilogy, uh, an article on the Hindi kaiju film Gogala, uh, among other topics. And I'm actually writing a few more articles for them. I'm one of their regular writers. I write for both the website and the magazine. So definitely check that out. You can find them at kaijuramenmedia.com. There's also their Twitter at kaiju_ramen. But as for the podcast, recently we were review bombed on Apple Podcasts. So we are sitting right now at a 3-star rating, which, I mean, I know I'm annoying and I know Rex is objectively wrong, but I don't think we're worth
I'm right.
no. So, if you guys could, please rate us on iTunes. That boosts our ratings and helps us get recommended to more people like you. Give us a 5-star so we can bump that 3-star up to a 5-star. If you don't have an Apple device and listen to us through something like Spotify, you can review us on Spotify now with a new update. So give us a 5-star review there. Or if you want to just give us some feedback or message us, you can tweet us and follow us on Twitter at KAIJU_CONVERS. If you don't have Twitter, you can like us on Facebook or follow us on Instagram and contact us that way. If you're like me before podcasting and don't have any social media, lucky you. You can email us at kaijuconversation@gmail.com, all lowercase, all one word, you know the drill. And as always, we will read your reviews on air for everybody to hear. If you want to send us some mailbag questions, I just stole that from Kaiju Weekly. We don't have a mailbag, but if you just want to send us some stuff, go for it. Recently, we had a member of our Discord server, Jurgen. He sent us a response to our Cloverfield episode, and we read it out and talked about it for a little bit. So feel free to do that. We love having that fan interaction. We also have merchandise on our Teespring store. It's just our logo on a bunch of different things. Maybe eventually we'll have some exclusive art on there from our own artist. It's all up in the air, but just hang out and maybe eventually we'll get something going there. If you'd like to chat with me or Rex one-on-one and hear our opinions on different subjects, you can join our Discord server where you can talk to us and other people just like you. Looking right now on our Discord server in our general chat, it looks like the most recent conversation was on Kamen Rider, specifically the original 1971 series. So we have tons of different topics on tokusatsu and kaiju in the server, so definitely check it out if you're interested. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you can be notified anytime we upload. Just tonight, I got almost all of our episodes set up, so we're going to finally have them posting on our YouTube channel. We also,
Hallelujah.
I know, right? We were like 20 episodes behind, so
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, yeah, that was a little bit of a project to get done. But we also upload sometimes bonus little rants. I know there's a video game segment that was before our Snake Girl episode that we had a discussion about, and we recorded it, and Rex has cut it, and we're going to upload it as its own little like discussion, little talk, kaiju talk. I don't know. Um, we also have bloopers on there, and just fun little things going on that you guys can check out to get a little more content from us. We have an exclusive interview with Ready Player One and Godzilla vs Kong Mechagodzilla designer Jared Kerchevsky. I think I'm pronouncing his name correctly.
Probably not.
Um, Probably not, but that's really cool. Definitely check that out. And as always, a huge thanks to Rex for editing all of these episodes, especially this one. It'll be a doozy. So
Yes.
definitely check out all of his stuff. It can be found in the Linktree link below. And that will do it for us here at Kaiju Conversation this week. And I can't wait to see you guys for next week's episode and our final spooky episode of the year.
What could it be?
Stay tuned and find out. You'll find out during the next episode as we won't reveal it, right? We never reveal anything before the episode even starts. Oh yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot. And remember, life's too short to not talk big. Bye guys.
Ciao.